No, and so we had that little interlude last week for Tu B'Shvat.
Uh-huh.
And so the week before that, we were in the midst of Ruth, and so we're going to finish Ruth off today. Uh,
Oh,
and
even had a question about from 2 weeks ago about Ruth. We weren't. They said about Moabites not coming into the
yeah,
Israelites for 10 generations, and I kind of looked, and it seems like it was only 2 generations between Ruth and David's father. I think
yeah,
so. That somebody kind of looked the other way or something.
I would believe that's accurate. Yes, that would be my guess. Was that it was very purposeful, and I think one can draw their own conclusions, maybe as to why the author tried to do that. I do think it's actually part of a greater message the author is trying to impart.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's random. I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's actually part of the theme of the book. Um, and so what that theme might be, I think we can have a good debate on. But I do think it is part of a broader idea.
Mhm.
Uh, that was because I feel like the author throughout the book is very purposeful and using a lot of interesting, the author is no dummy. Like the author knows his biblical history.
Yeah.
Yeah, the author understands he's pulling out all these different biblical themes, and I would argue that he's pulling out a lot of biblical threads for fun, almost like a like not maybe subversive is too strong of a word, but I think certainly he's having some fun.
Uh-huh.
He's sort of poking and prodding and sort of digging, trying to find that sweet spot where he can hit a nerve.
Hmm. I also was looking around, and it said in those times that generally, uh, becoming a Jew was more like, and I think you mentioned it,
Yeah,
that people joined through their father's line. But
yeah,
after Ruth, it kind of switched, or after time of David, it sort of went the other way. But
yeah.
in the beginning, they said that, people would move into a village and just sort of pick up the local behaviors, and that was how they were accepted. Once,
Oh, definitely. When we could spend a whole session just on the matriarchal versus patrilineal, matrilineal versus patrilineal descent issues, because that comes later. Matrilineal descent, the idea that you're Jewish if your mother is Jewish, is a much later innovation. There's nothing in that biblically, and in rabbinic Judaism it comes later. And just for the very obvious, if not a little bit gauche reason, is that when the baby's born, you don't always know who the father is, but you know who the mother is.
that's what my father always said. My father grew up in a, we weren't Jewish. My father grew up in a very Jewish milieu, all of his friends as a child. It was always that you knew who your mother was, but you didn't know who your father was exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right.
The
Uh,
Karaites also still go uh, through the father, though, don't they?
I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not sure. I don't have
Yeah,
a
that
not
they
familiar.
don't observe that you get your Jewishness from your father with the
Yeah,
Karaites.
yeah, because since the Karaites don't have the oral Torah, so it would
Yeah.
make sense that they
Hmm.
would be more, just like that it's something that's passed down from generation to generation. But this whole idea of matrilineal descent gives rise to Jewish blood questions. And what does that actually mean? Like, and
Hmm.
how religion is disseminated. Because as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and you brought it up as well, about the idea of, well, what does it mean to be Jewish? At that time, like, what does it mean to convert? Like, now we have very specific ceremonies, and at that time, as you said, you could just, like, okay, I'm gonna believe in this God now, and that was sort of it. You didn't need a whole rigmarole to get yourself there. And my question with Ruth is more like that she has an affirmation, and the question is both how she sees herself and how others see her, which is, I think, a great question for the book. There's that insider outsider perspective. And it relates, I think, to today very much, actually, but the question is, who is a Jew, right? Who has standing in the Jewish community? That we view ourselves one way, I am a Jew, and then other people say, maybe not. But where does legitimacy and authenticity come from? Because some of it, of course, has to be self-motivated, but we also have, traditions and scriptures and beliefs, and as part of a collective, that we sort of decide the in groups and the out groups. Did anyone else see in the Tampa Bay Times, speaking of in groups and out groups, that I am thankfully not the rabbi who was arrested at the Capitol at the insurrection.
Wow. That was disgusting.
So that was good news for me. I got a call from my colleague, Matt Berger, Rabbi Berger at Palm Harbor. He also was not the one arrested, but the guy from the Messianic shul, was there.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Did you read the letter to the editor?
No, I didn't see it.
There was a letter to the editor saying Messianic Jews are not part of mainstream Judaism and don't consider us Messianic Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. So that's the whole thing, though, is that we made that decision, right? Like we communally, as Jewish organizations, Jewish institutions, have said that Messianic Jewish, sects are not part of the in group. We do not consider them Jewish. We do not consider them part of the Jewish world. We consider them on the outside. And they would tell you that they're Jewish. That's why they call those Messianic Jews. They consider themselves Jewish, right? But we collectively, as the Jewish whole, say not so much, right? That once you cross that bridge to saying Jesus is Messiah, and salvation is through Jesus, then you have now fundamentally denied, sort of like the Jewish faith and Jewish tenets. You become sort of an apostate at that point.
You become a Christian.
More Jewish. Yeah, go ahead.
They can become a Christian.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you were Jewish and you go there, yeah, exactly. So it's like we consider you part of a Christian sect, whatever it is, not a Jewish one, right? But we make that determination as a collective. We say no, too far, and too far has been used more than once, and it's been used at us too as Reformed Jews as well, right, from certain people. So I mean, if it was at the Women of the Wall thing on Sunday from Sisterhood, it's like that point was brought out, as well. That's part of the whole struggle, right? Is that Women of the Wall, Reformed movements say women can pray together, at the wall, and then they can pray together and have Torah and have Talis and all the things that we would affirm, and they say not so much. Not Jewish, not acceptable. Not that I'm comparing the two, but I'm just saying the idea that is, we always have that idea of in and out in religion. It's just part of what it is. That, everyone has this far and no further. There's always some kind of fence. The Reform movement has a pretty darn big tent and a pretty big fence, which is why I love it. But it gets only so far before you begin to dance on the outskirts again.
Matter of fact, I got 2 letters lately from them. I don't know how I got on the mail list.
I feel my way about a lot of things.
I'm not converting.
Well, Bob, is it possible you went to some site that set itself up as Jewish? Because this has happened to me. I was looking around, and this appeared in all ways to look Jewish, and never mentioned that they were Messianic. And so now I get things from them, but I know who they are. And it's something that they do. We're Jews, and that's the way they try and put themselves out. And if you don't look too close, that's what you believe.
But it's the type of thing that we know and everything. Mainstream America does not. And that was one good thing that this letter to the editor says, hey, wait, we aren't all alike.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, but I would also say that that's actually true, though I think we feel it more pointedly because this affects us more directly. But I would say that that's pretty, standard with any religious group that has denominations. Like after a while, it sort of blends, some of the bigger points of different, use an example about different Protestant traditions, for example, different, Islamic sects, it's easy to paint with a broad brush, and not everyone knows all the specific details about each tradition. It's easy to lump them around. Jews, Jews do this. Jews do a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of different things. As we know, there isn't one. And that's, by the way, it's Jewish history 101. I mean, that's one of the biggest misconceptions about Jewish history, is that we were ever monolithic, and we were never monolithic. We were always, had a diversity of opinion on things. Going back to Talmud, going back, as Gary had mentioned, the Karaites, going back to Jewish sectarianism, going back to the Bible, biblical times. There's always been different opinions of what it means to be an Israelite, the Jew, whatever it is. There's always been, some hopefully constructive discord, but discord about what these things mean. And I would guess that the author of Ruth had that in mind in writing the book of Ruth. That I think he was playing with that dynamic as he was writing it, because that Ruth character is polemical, I think. I think it's meant to be something that stirs the pot and gets people talking. Ruth, a Moabite in the Israelite tent. You picture the guy with the monocle and it falls down. Oh my stars! What's going on here? And then the big hook in the end, which we all know. Spoiler alert: the big hook, is that not only is it a Moabite, but the Moabite is going to be the great grandmother of King David, of the messianic lineage. So like I think that's very much on purpose, and very much the author going and just having some fun with us, but not just to poke. I think it's meant to provoke discussion, and the question is what does it mean to be an Israelite, a Jewish person? What do our laws mean? What do the commandments mean? Which one of them are important? Which one of them might not be as important? So maybe, even at the time of Ruth, they're saying, what's this Moabite nonsense? Like, do we really care about a Moabite coming to the community about something from thousands of years? A Moabite, they want to convert to Judaism? Good, sei gesund, let him convert. We can use the temple dues, What are we busting chops here for? Moabite, fine, come on in, have a cookie,
He's a fellow.
Why are we hawking the Chinik on this, And so I feel like that was very much the author's idea, is to sort of bring those things and shine a light on them in a different way through a piece of literature, that it probably feels safe there, to sort of put it in a legend, sort of in a parable, that it was safe to sort of keep it there. It's good times. It's a good book. I was also thinking today how between Song of Songs and Ruth and Judith, I'm going to get a reputation here of just having these books that have a little bit too much R-rated material in them. And
Maybe that's why the class is so small.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, my goodness, this
It should be bigger. It should be
it's like
bigger.
After Dark. It's like Rabbi After Dark. It's not,
I'm wondering that's why the class is so old.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
we have to get to some more, kosher material, so to speak. My God. Okay. So let's dive in. So where we sort of finished off, we finished chapter 2. Last time we did this. Ruth is now here, back in Bethlehem with Naomi. Ruth has stayed with her mother-in-law Naomi after her spouse dies, and so she and Naomi and Ruth form this very intimate sort of bond, familial bond, where they're looking out for each other, looking out for each other's needs. Ruth is now working in the fields of Boaz, doing some barley winnowing and threshing and all that other good stuff. And Boaz is taking a shine to her. Boaz is very sort of taken with her, enthralled with her, wants to help her, wants to protect her because of the kindness that Ruth has done for Naomi. Now Boaz is showing kindness, showing chesed, right, to her. And so that's sort of where we are, that she's, getting more barley and getting into Boaz's good graces. And now the big hook here, for the narrative is that, Ruth's husband died, and Naomi doesn't have any more children for her to marry. So the levirate marriage doesn't work out so well. And we were told there's no hope, there's no remedy here. But in fact, there is a remedy, because Boaz is a redeeming kinsman. He is somebody who is related, albeit distantly, to Elimelech, to Naomi's husband. So it's in the family. It's all in the family, so to speak. So there's someone related enough who is a redeemer, someone who can marry Ruth, and then it would take care of her, and it would solve her problems and Naomi's problems. If Ruth could find a husband, then they would be able to get out of poverty, and sort of have a restoration of their fortunes. And so, luckily enough, Boaz is that man, and Boaz is very attracted to Ruth. Ruth seems to be attracted to him. Good times all around. And now she is home, Ruth with Naomi, and they're going to chat a little bit. They're going to develop some thoughts here on what the next step might be, now that they know there is some mutual interest in the pursuit of a relationship. Though Boaz does not yet know that he is a redeeming kinsman for Ruth. He does not know that at this point. He's in the dark. He just thinks that she's a nice young woman who is helping out her mother-in-law, but he doesn't know the inner workings yet of the story. That has not been revealed to him yet, but it will be in a moment. Okay, with all that backstory said, Sharon,
Okay,
get us started.
sure. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "Daughter, I must seek a home for you where you may be happy. Now there is our kinsman Boaz, whose girls you were close to. He will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor tonight. So bathe, anoint yourself, dress up, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not disclose yourself to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he lies down and go over and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what you are to do," she replied. "I will do everything you tell me."
Okay, indeed. So we're starting off here pretty good. So I was reading a commentary today, and believe me, if you think what I have to say tonight's gonna, be a little bit whatever, some of these commentaries make my stuff look PG. But that being said, Naomi here, let's focus on some of the more G-rated elements of this paragraph, because there aren't many of them. The first sentence goes back to that question that we were sort of playing with 2 weeks ago and also today about perception, right, and connection. So she uses this phrase, and we saw it before last time, but Naomi, her mother-in-law, she calls her daughter. She calls her BT, my daughter. So there's definitely getting that feeling of close relationship, of kinship, that if we are in a relationship with somebody, and we all have, like we have our parents and we have our in-laws, whatever it's going to be, but like that relationship between the in-laws, and the person, sometimes that's closer than others. In this one over here, there's certainly that feeling that, again, now a bond really has been established. You are my daughter. Let me try to help you, be successful. Let me help you try to navigate this situation. That she wants to really help her find a home, and help her, pursue her happiness, right? And make sure that she's taken care of. And so that's a really nice, I think, sentiment in the beginning. Now let me tell you how it's gonna get done with our kinsman Boaz, right? So he's winnowing barley on the threshing floor tonight. So it's time to, doll yourself up a little bit, bathe, anoint yourself, get the essential oils, all that other good stuff, get the perfume sprayed, dress up, put on your Shabbos best. That is actually one of the commentaries that says put on your Shabbos best and go, because, that makes it feel a little better. And then go down to the threshing floor. But do not disclose yourself to the man until he's finished eating or drinking. Okay? What does that mean?
Sounds like she's going to pick him up in a bar.
Yep. That's exactly right. Wait till he gets nice and merry, right? Wait till after he eats and drinks, and is satiated. Don't come up to him yet. Wait for him to be in a better mood, so to speak. And then when he lies down, take a note, where he's going to lie down. And then when it's quiet, go over, uncover his feet, and lie down. This lie down phrase is used like 3 times in this sentence. And that verb, shachav, does mean to lie down. It also means other things as well, euphemistically. But it does mean lie down. And of course, as much as I love going over this again and again, uncover his feet. Also probably a euphemism, as we know, from other biblical texts, where feet is probably really much not feet. And so she's going to go lie down and uncover his feet, is how you probably want to read that, with little extra italics or a little extra whatever. And so there's a lot of verbs here between shachav, between yada. Yada yodea means to know, right? And that's intellectual knowledge. But as we also know from other parts of the Bible, Adam knew his wife Eve. Like he didn't, just meet her, he knew her in the biblical sense, as they said, where they procreated and, they had more children. They had children, I should say. And so we see these verbs that I think are definitely meant to be provocative, if not a little salacious in here. The double entendre sometimes feels like a single entendre, I'll put it that way, that it's pretty clear what's going on here. This is a seduction scene. He will tell you what to do is also perhaps not, doesn't need to have any more description than that sentence will tell us. And then she replied, I will do everything you tell me. One might note, as I read in a commentary today, why Naomi really felt the need to be this graphic in a way, because, not for nothing, Ruth was a married woman. And Ruth probably did understand some of the stuff already. But that being said, Naomi does take it upon herself to be fairly explicit when it comes to what this should look like. Huzzah! Any questions so far? Because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Okay. Gary, you want to pick up here?
Sure. She went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. Boaz ate and drank, and in a cheerful mood went to lie down beside the grain pile. Then she went over stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. In the middle of the night, the man gave a start and pulled back. There was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked, and she replied, I am your handmaid, Ruth. Spread your robe over your handmaid, for you are a redeeming kinsman.
Thank you for that. So she went down to the good old threshing floor, which, by the way, can be seen as the name of a bar in a way. But that being said, she went down to the threshing floor. Yikes. And did as her mother-in-law instructed her. Boaz, of course, has already eaten. He's had something to eat. He had a little drink. He had a bissel but one thinks maybe a little bit more than abyssal to eat and drink at this point. There's certainly the interpretation that his cheerful mood is pretty much a euphemism that he's drunk at this point. Like he has. I love the way the Book of Esther talks about it. I think it's actually similar in the Hebrew. His heart was merry with wine. And so I think that's sort of what we have here. His heart was merry with wine. And he went to lie down, i.e. he passed out by the grain pile. And then she went over stealthily. I love stealthily, but stealthily she went over, uncovered his feet, and lay down. Okay, so now this has happened, right? So that's where we are. And then in the middle of the night, he wakes up, gives a start, and pulls back. There's a woman at his feet. One wonders what he was thinking at this moment in time. The rabbis have just way too much fun with that sentence. But you're looking at it, Peshat, looking at it the simple sort of way. I'm sure he was a little confused.
She told him it was okay though, because he's a redeeming kinsman. She gave him permission.
Oh yeah, definitely. Believe me, we need to kosherize this right quick. Like 100%. We have to make sure that everything is nice and on the level here, because after all, as we had just mentioned, this is going to be David's grandma, whatever it is, great grandma, whatever it's going to be, right? So we have to make this kosher real fast. And the rabbis, perhaps surprisingly, have trouble sometimes with normative behavior. They want to make sure that we really understand that there might be higher, holier layers to this. But this is a very I don't think it's a really bizarre interaction, just in the fact that it's like, she's trying to get in good with him. She's trying to, seduce him, and he's a man, she's a woman. This is, the rabbis, wait a minute, we have to make sure this is all on the level, because God forbid that a man and a woman are attracted to each other, and they want to make sure that that Torah is involved somehow. Like there's actually a commentary saying that his heart was glad, not with drink, but because he just studied some Torah. I'm doubtful that's why his heart was glad. But they do have some of that interpretation, of course, as well. And that's, so yeah, he's surprised, no kidding, that there's a woman with him in that moment. And you can see he's groggy, he's disoriented, he doesn't know who she is at that time, he's trying to shake out the cobwebs. And then she said, I'm Ruth, remember me from the threshing, from the fields, remember me, and spread your robe. By the way, if he spreads his robe over the handsmaid, over Ruth, I doubt he's wearing much else than the robe. Okay, so again, there's a little bit more there as well. Spread your robe over your handsmaid, for you are a redeeming kinsman. This goes back to, again, plain sense reading. Spread your robe over your kinsman is over your handmaid is very clearly a sexual allusion, in a way, because they're in bed together at this point. He's really like, she's really saying, come cuddle with me, whatever it is. The rabbis say it's like his tallis. He's putting his tallis around her, so then they can daven shacharis in the morning, or that it really is. I'm not sure if you've seen this at a Jewish wedding or not. I do this at a Jewish wedding. That if the groom is wearing a tallis, when I do the priestly benediction, I have him put the tallis over, the shoulder of his partner, right? And that way, I bless them both. It's sort of like entwined in the same garment. So one can say, to be fair, one can view this as almost a proposition of marriage. Right? One can make that jump. I'm doubtful that's what it actually means in the simple reading, but if we want to make it a little bit flowery and nice and romantic, and not a drunken one-night stand on a threshing floor, we can certainly try to kosherize this a little bit more. Okay. But and also I will mention with the wedding idea, to be fair, again, to the text, for you are a redeeming kinsman. It makes it better for Boaz, right? It makes it better for him, but this isn't just some, floozy from the bar, that this is somebody who he has an obligation to, right? He has a responsibility to. So it can encourage him to fulfill his own desires he might have had previously, but now again, it makes it right. Like it makes it feel like the correct thing to do. That now he has an obligation to her, and she, is connected to him in a greater sense than, hey, I saw you by the by the threshing mill or whatever it is. I'm not a farmer, but I saw you over there in the fields. It gives it a higher level, which obviously is important for the text. Okay, with all that said, we're gonna keep going. Huzzah. Bonnie, you want to read a little bit here?
He exclaimed, "Be blessed of the eternal, daughter. Your latest deeds of loyalty is greater than the first, in that you have not turned to younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, daughter, have no fear. I will do in your behalf whatever you ask, for all the elders in my town know what a fine woman you are."
Okay, indeed. She is a fine woman. So it's a nice text here. Again, they're in a way, like, even though it is still sort of a seductive scene for the obvious reason that they're in bed together, but it is also like they're trying to understand each other, right? And trying to sort of like they're coming together in a very nice way. That she is fond of him, he is fond of her, and he sort of sees her as doing the right thing. And when he wants to do the right thing by her, that she could have potentially tried to find a younger man, try to find somebody different, but she wants to do the right by the family, by the tradition, even though she could have maybe done something different. And he's going to say, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you out. I'm going to do whatever I can here. And, don't worry so much that we're here in bed together and whatever it is, because, if people see us, don't worry. Everyone knows what a wonderful woman you are. Everyone knows what a fine, upstanding, moral citizen you are. You don't have to worry so much about the judgment of the elders. It's okay. Reassuring is the word I wanted. They are reassuring each other that both of their motivations are, in fact, correct, and that they really do. They're almost like they're meant to be together. They're beshirt.
There's nothing salacious about this.
Say again?
Nothing salacious about this.
No, this paragraph's a little bit more helpful. I'll put it that way. But
why is he calling her daughter? That's a little creepy.
That's a little creepy
Right.
in terms of language. That could be a whole other class, but that's a little creepy in terms of language. So basically, it is a term of affection. It is a term of, so like one has to assume he's 20 years her senior, give or take. I think from this text, that's how I've always read it. That he's sort of an older to her. She's like he's an older man. And so a term of endearment, but perhaps one that strikes the ear a little bit off by today's standards. Oh, I got something in my head that would get me fired. We're gonna keep going. Okay. We're gonna keep going. So next we have Boaz is gonna continue to talk. Renee.
Let me see.
But while it is true.
But while it is true, I am a redeeming kinsman. There is another redeemer closer than I. Stay for the night. Then in the morning, if he will act as a redeemer, good. Let him redeem. But if he does not want to act as a redeemer for you, I will do so myself, as the Eternal lives. Lie down until morning.
Yeah, so here's another fun passage that we have to sort of decode. So Boaz says, before, great, it's all good, mazel tov all around, sure, I want to help you out, and we're into each other. it's a bonus, so that's great. But there's always a but. There's always a question, right? So even though it is true that I am a redeeming kinsman, someone else is in front of me in the line, right? We can't jump the line here. We have to follow the specific order. So in chapter 1, we had no redeeming kinsman. In chapter 3, we got 2. We have Boaz and we have unnamed dude. Unnamed dude is going to make an appearance, sooner than later, but right now he's unnamed, or so we think. This next sentence is fascinating. So stay for the night. We'll skip over that for a second. Then in the morning, if he's going to act as a redeemer, good. There are some people who interpret this good as a proper name. So good meaning tov, right? Tov is the Hebrew word for good. And so they're saying if tov will act as a redeemer, he'll redeem. Not that it's good that he'll do it, right? So it would be read in the morning, if tov will act as a redeemer, let him redeem. Sort of Boaz being a little bit more like, well, it is what it is. That someone else will marry you, will be with you, as opposed to reading him as a little bit colder and saying, hey, no great shakes to me. If he'll act as a redeemer, fine, let him take you. But if not, I'll take you. It's fine. I'll do it myself. But meanwhile, come a little closer. Get out of my dreams and into my car. So while we're here, let's spend the night together. And so, of course,
Want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. Give me a little more.
So she lay at his feet. She lay at his feet until dawn. She rose before one person could distinguish another, for he thought, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, hold out the shawl you are wearing. She held it while he measured out 6 measures of barley, and he put it on her back.
Yeah, there ain't no good way of reading this for me. If someone else has a better interpretation.
That's kind of like a payment.
Getting paid.
If someone else has a better interpretation of this, that's fine. But the way I read it is, thanks for the good time,
Same
baby. Here's some barley.
Right, exactly.
Which I can't figure out another reading of that, especially from the whole paragraph, frankly. She lay at his feet until dawn. Okay. And then she gets up before one can distinguish from another, because all this fine woman stuff that happened earlier, maybe it's not the best idea that everyone sees you and I together here on the threshing floor and get thoughts in their heads of what happened. And so again, thanks for the good time. Here's some barley. Get out of here before anyone sees you.
It sounds like he's trying to save her reputation, where he said before, everyone knows what a fine woman you are. So this way, it sounds like she just came and got to get some barley.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. You see, we could salvage this.
She made it nicer. She took something bad and made it good.
No, but that's good. I'll take it. I think that's very nice.
Yeah.
If that is indeed the case, I will take it. I think that helps me and my reading.
Sure
of it. That would
does.
be nice. I would like to believe that to be the case. And so she gets out. She's got her barley to go. She takes the walk home. Marilyn Warner, you want to pick up?
Sure.
Here we go. Go ahead.
When she got back to the town, she came to her mother-in-law, who asked, how is it with your daughter? She told her all that the man had done for her. And she added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying to me, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. And Naomi said, stay here, daughter, till you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today.
There you go. We'll settle it today. Okay. And so how was your night? Let me tell you how my night went. And then here's this barley. Okay. Well, you know what? gotta wait the rest of the day and we'll sort it out. At least this thing is moving quick. And so, okay, so we had the night, we had that scene. And now the question is, what's going to happen, the next day in the definitely, pun intended, the sober light of day. What's going to happen when everyone's wine wears off, and we can see what's going to happen. I mentioned before sort of levirate marriage, and just so we have, again, some of the contextualization, Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10 lays out, some of these laws of levirate marriage. And let me see here. My screen bounced around a little bit. Bob, do you want to give that a little bit of a read? Can you unmute? Nope. Sandy.
Yes.
I see you dwelling in darkness a little bit. You want to give me a little read?
No, I'm gonna have to do some lighting work here, but anyhow, okay. When brothers dwell together and one of them dies and leaves no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married to a stranger outside the family. Her husband's brother shall unite with her. He shall take her as his wife and perform the levir's duty. The first son that she bears shall be accounted to the dead brother. That is, his name may not be blotted out in Israel.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and so this gives us the foundation, some of the thinking behind it, that it is specifically brothers, but then if it gets extended out to, different male members of the family. And it's really only this case that if there's no heir, if there's no son in particular, that the wife of the deceased, its own has to, again, remain within the family. It really is, to be clear, an inheritance issue more than anything else, right? The families are allotted, you have to remember, plots. They're allotted land. And if this wife, if the widow would then marry out, right, of the family, then another family gets that piece of land. So it begins to diminish in a way. That's one theory about this. That's why we need the male heir to then take over that land as well. And of course, it is also because, as it says in this last line, because his first son will be named after the deceased. That way, that name continues to be carried on. And so it's a way of also remembering as well. So there's a practical and emotional, I think, level to levirate marriage. Thank you, Sandy. You want to finish us off?
Sure. But if the man does not want to marry his brother's widow shall appear before the elders in the gate and declare, my husband's brother refuses to establish a name in Israel for his brother. He will not perform the duty of a lever.
Okay, and so that's that's also an option, right? The brother can say, nah, not so much. I'm not interested in doing this.
What if he's married?
If he's married, at that
It wasn't
time,
an issue then.
Yeah, it's like at that time it wasn't much of an issue. I'm not sure his wife would feel the same way, but certainly, yeah, you can have more than one spouse at that time period. So, the Sephardim, had the ability to have more than one wife until like the mid 20th century, depending on where they were from, in the Sephardic communities. So the Ashkenazim eliminated it much earlier. The Ashkenazim eliminated it 1000 CE, where they got rid of the idea of having more than one spouse. There was a very famous takana. There was a famous opinion. What would we call it today? Like, a position paper, that carries some weight to it, that was written in 1000 CE. And it became the law for 1,000 years. So in 1999, they had to revisit the issue and had to determine whether or not they should keep that law that a man, that people are only allowed to have one spouse. Because there was a question then of saying, hey, wait a minute, now this thing is expired. All bets are off, but then the rabbis, of course, in 1999 decided to extend it another 1,000 years. So it won't be a problem again until 2,999. Then it'll come up again for discussion. But the Sephardim didn't have it, again, depending on where they were. So that changed again about mid 20th century. So that being a little bit of a tangent, but here we are. So okay, now we've learned a little bit more about levirate marriage. So what happens then if this crumb bum won't do his duty? Sandy, you want to finish that off?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
The elders of his town shall then summon him and talk to him. If he insists, saying, I do not want to marry her, his brother's widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull the sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and make this declaration. Thus shall be done to the man who will not build up his brother's house, and he shall go in Israel by the name of the family of the unsandaled one.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what you get. That's what you get. You don't do the right thing.
Wow.
You lose a sandal, you get a loogie spit at you.
Wow.
You don't want that. So that being said, you live. You move on with your day. There are certainly worse things. But I just love the you'll go by the family of the unsandaled one. It's a very unique and very specific ritual. Oh my goodness. Okay, I think Linda Bilo. Linda, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Rabbi?
It's nice to see you. I'm okay. You want to pick up here on chapter 4?
Chapter 4. Meanwhile, Boaz had gone to the gate and sat down there. And now the Redeemer, whom Boaz had mentioned, passed by. He called, come over and sit down here, so-and-so. And he came over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 elders of the town and said, be seated here. And they sat down.
Again, I just love the paragraph, So Boaz came to the gate. It's all the official business takes place. We had seen in the Deuteronomy passage, you go to the gate, and just by happenstance, the Redeemer happens to mosey on by. He's just passing by. This guy is so insignificant, he don't even get a name.
Yeah.
What is the Redeemer?
So.
What is the Redeemer?
So-and-so.
Rabbi, what do they mean by Redeemer? I'm not sure.
Oh, Redeemer means that somebody who can perform the acts of a lever. The one who can be the levirate marriage person. That way he can redeem, so to speak, the widow and restore her fortunes.
So they were both redeemers, though. Boaz was a redeemer too.
Boaz is next in line,
right?
So to speak. It's almost like in the United States, that you have like the president, and then you have like the VP, and then you have people in line behind.
Right.
So like the State of the Union, if something God forbid were to happen, then like the
next one,
Department of Agriculture person gets to become president, because they're the ones who's alive. So, so you have this line of succession. So here it's similar. It's like a line of redemption. And so it's not Boaz's turn, so to speak. It's this other Redeemer who, again, is not. You can get a sense from the context of that paragraph that this guy's not going to be very important if they don't even bother giving him a name. Yeah. His name doesn't matter. Hey, you. It's just funny to me only because like the author made that choice. Like the author could have made up any name. The whole thing's made up. The whole thing's a parable. It's a story. Give the man a name. I don't need it. Don't need a name. Seems lazy, but it's fine. Linda, you want to give me one more paragraph here?
Sure. He said to the Redeemer, Naomi, now returned from the country of Moab, must sell a piece of land which belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. I thought I should disclose the matter to you and say, acquire it in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you are willing to redeem it, redeem. But if you will not redeem, tell me that I may know, for there is no one to redeem but you, and I come after you. I am willing to redeem it, he replied.
Okay, so wait a minute here. What's
What the
going on? Boaz is sort of,
You guy wants it in front of the jury.
he wants it, but he's not talking about Ruth. He's talking about a piece of land. Where'd this land come from? All of a sudden now there's land, that needs to be sold from Naomi. It's like Naomi's, the mother-in-law. Oh, by the way, she has some land here, it belonged to her husband. And if you want it, it's yours. You can take the land. Sure. Who doesn't like a little extra land, right? Who doesn't want a little property? So he says, sure, I'll take the land. That's great. Okay, but wait, there's a catch that Boaz is going to give him in a second. Linda White, you went on mute? There you are. Okay. Now let's see what the catch is.
Boaz continued, when you acquired the property from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabite, you must also acquire the wife of the deceased, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate. The Redeemer replied, then I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own estate. You take over my right of redemption, for I am unable to exercise it.
Again, fantastic paragraph. So you want this piece of land? That's great, but I hope you have room in the minivan, because now you get a wife too. Yay, both of them. Here she is. It's like, let's make a deal. The curtain goes back. A brand new wife. And so he sees this and goes, wait a minute. I don't want another wife. That's a problem, for me, because then it's going to actually hurt myself, in my properties, because I have to have another kid, and that's going to cause a problem with my other family and my other relations probably, and my land's going to be divvied up differently. So it's going to just cause more complication and more headache for me. Nope, no thank you, I'm out. I have no interest in redeeming it. You take over the right of redemption. Boaz, it's all you. And Boaz, of course, I think this worked out according to plan. I'll put it that way. Linda White, you want to give me one more paragraph here?
Now this was formerly done in Israel in cases of redemption or exchange. To validate my transaction, one man would take off his sandal and hand it to the other. Such was the practice in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, acquire for yourself, he drew off his sandal.
Okay, and so as we had read in Deuteronomy, they had this like sandal experience. And one would guess that, again, so the author of Ruth knew about the sandal, right? He knew about that tradition. I'm not sure if he thought other people knew about it, but he was leaving some breadcrumbs here for the reader, because now this was formally done in Israel. Just that statement makes the implication that it's no longer done in Israel, right? Now this was formally done in the past, the way we used to do it, because we had this whole sandal thing. So just to remind everyone new that we used to do this. So just a little bit of a play, I think, for the author, just to have a little bit of fun and remind us of our biblical history. But again, I would argue that the author puts a lot of breadcrumbs down in this book, and then that is one of them.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I had my sound up. I think Boa knew that before, because he was very smart. He went in, he sat down and he had the elders come there.
Yep.
And then he asked him, but he was already, I think he was already sure that this guy didn't want to redeem.
Yeah, I think that Boaz knew what he was doing, and he set it up in a way that it might have seemed possible in the beginning, but then he sort of gave the big reveal. Look what we got here, and then he goes, oh, maybe not. I think my wife at home will be so thrilled, if I bring home Ruth with me too. Went to market and came home with another wife, kind of thing wouldn't be the best play at home, I think. So Boaz definitely, I think he very strategically planned this conversation to get to the point where he wanted to get to, which was that he could marry Ruth himself, 100%. I think that's correct. And actually, Bob, you want to read this paragraph over here? Bob, can you hear me?
Yes. And Boaz said to the elders and the rest of the people, "You are my witnesses today that I'm acquiring from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. I also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, as my wife, so that as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate, and the name of the deceased may not disappear from among the kinsmen and from the gate of this hometown. You are the witnesses today."
Indeed they are, and just in case, we have a minion. Remember, we had those 10 elders that are there. We have a minion to make sure that everyone sort of sees this and knows what's going on, 100%. And so he makes this big public declaration. And now, Bob, you want to give me one more? All the people?
And all the people of the gate and the elders answered, "We are. May the Eternal make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built up the house of Israel, prosper in Ephrathah, and perpetuate your name in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So the offspring which the Eternal will give you by this young woman."
Yay, mazel tov all around. Okay, so all the men and all the elders are thrilled. They see nothing but good here. I was checking something here. Yeah, good enough. Okay. So yeah, they're all very happy. They're all very excited, about this proposition. All's well that ends well. And now we get just a paragraph of breadcrumbs and almost like flicking the ear in a way, of the author giving us some food for thought in the people that he names here in this paragraph. Because one looks at this paragraph, right, and you see all these names, and you go, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? It has Rachel and Leah. Okay, nice. Rachel and Leah are part of the matriarchs, right? They aren't the only ones, right? But they're part of the matriarchs. Where's Sarah? Rebecca's not in there. Rachel and Leah. Okay, why not? And then we have this last sentence about, may your house be the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Why them? Got a big Bible, got a big Torah. Why that family in particular, right? And so the author, I think, again, very intentionally picks people here whose relationships can be viewed as troubling in a way. And I think that's what the author is intending, is for us to sort of, again, think of the bigger picture of this whole Moabite issue, and using the Moabite issue to then bring out some other ideas as well. The problem with Rachel and Leah is what, biblically speaking?
Weren't they married? Weren't they both married to the same person?
Married to
Joseph.
the same dude,
Joseph.
right?
Joseph.
They're married to Jacob.
Jacob, right.
And while you may have, while you may have two spouses, according to Leviticus, you can't marry sisters. That's a no-go.
Right.
You're not allowed to do that according to biblical law. You can't marry sisters. But Jacob, of course, marries sisters, and only had the 12 tribes come out of it. our entire sort of
Right, right.
comes out of that relationship, right? By the way, they do get shorted here, but Bilha and Zilpa, also probably could be in the conversation as well. But since they were handmaidens, so to speak, they don't get included. That's another discussion for another day. But but they also obviously had a role in bearing the tribes, since they both did have a number of the sons. So that's Rachel and Leah's problem. What's Tamar's problem and Judah?
I don't remember that.
Tamar. Wait,
If we had
know
another
that
hour,
story.
believe me, I have it in here. But if we had another hour,
Right, Tamar.
Judah and Tamar is his daughter-in-law,
Already,
and it is the foundational story about levirate marriage in Genesis. That Tamar marries one of Judah's sons. Judah's son dies, and the next one up, the next brother, doesn't want to be in that relationship, and he takes active steps to ensure he does not impregnate his brother's wife, and for that he is killed. God strikes him down and kills him, and then she's supposed to marry the third son. And Judah says, I'm not, he doesn't say this out loud to her, but his thought process for Judah is like, I'm not letting you marry the third son because my first two are dead now. You're a black widow. Like, I'm not having you marry my third son. And doesn't allow that to happen and does not perform the levirate function. And then he winds up through trickery, through a whole charade, he winds up with her, and they have a son, Perez. And so we have another relationship here that is less than kasher, according to the biblical text. And so that paragraph here, I think, is again supposed to give us some poking, as I mentioned, give us a little bit of a prod, and say, oh, wait a minute here, what's going on with this text? Okay, Debbie Siegel, you want to finish us off?
Yes, I'm here. So Boaz married Ruth. She became his wife, and he cohabited with her. The Eternal let her conceive, and she bore a son. And the women said to Naomi, Blessed the Eternal, who has not withheld a redeemer from you today. May his name be perpetuated in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain your old age, for he is born of your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons.
Huzzah. Okay. Here's where I got a little problem too, and maybe one of you can salvage this for me in terms of the end of this book. But I got a little problem when I read this. So Boaz marries Ruth, Huzzah, Mazel Tov, great things. They have a child together again, and the women say to Naomi, "What happened to Ruth?" Not to Ruth, right? So to Naomi, they say, "Hey, life is great, party time all around. Blessed be God, may his name be perpetuated in Israel. This is your grandson, right? And this grandson is better to you than even 7 sons, Naomi." Meanwhile, Ruth's over there recuperating, and not having too much fun after bearing this child, right? And all of a sudden, Naomi's getting all the credit. Naomi's getting showered here with affection and blessings, just to make matters. Yeah,
she did set it up. Naomi did set it up, and she became a grandmother, even though neither one of them were related to her. So she got all the glory.
She got all the glory, and just to make matters just a little bit more clear that the author really is giving Ruth a little bit of the old heave-ho by the end, Naomi takes the child and holds it to her bosom and became its foster mother. And the women neighbors gave him a name, saying, "A son is born to Naomi." And they named him Obed, and he was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. And the line of Perez from a little earlier, right? We had Perez up in this paragraph here. So the line of Perez, Perez begot Hezron, Hezron begot Ram begot blah, 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 all the way down. We have our friend Nachshon here, biblical Midrashic lore. Nachshon begets Salmon, Boaz, Obed begets Jesse, and Jesse begets David. Okay, so we get the entire line. This whole part here you don't need, right? But they give you the line starting with Perez, starting with the one who was born of Judah and Tamar. So just to be very clear that David's line begins with incest, with the father-in-law with his daughter-in-law. So they give you that there, and of course the whole Moabite thing we know already. And so the rabbis actually say that Naomi starts lactating here, and then she's actually feeding and suckling the child as its foster mother. And so Ruth, after all this work to get this thing done, she's sort of, in my reading of this, pushed a little bit to the side, and Naomi sort of gets center stage.
So Boaz didn't want to have his son?
No, he did, but I think the question is,
I mean, he didn't want to keep his son?
No, he's there. Believe me, Boaz is still there. But the issue is do Boaz and Ruth become a tool for Naomi's redemption, for Naomi's restoration, right? Because Naomi is the one who was Marah, who was bitter, right? She went away full and came back empty. And now in the end, Naomi is redeemed, as well as Ruth. I'm not saying Ruth got nothing out of this, but I'm just saying that by the end of the book, it feels more about Naomi in the end and about her story and her journey to a place of happiness and of well-being than Ruth's story, where Ruth, it feels that by the end of it, sort of gets pushed a little bit out of the side. Her task completed, so to speak. She has a level completed. She has the son. That they wanted to redeem the land, to make sure the name didn't die out. But now it's like, let's all celebrate Naomi. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if Ruth has married Boaz, who is a person of means, she has now become an important woman, and Naomi has become important because of that connection there. I don't see that there's exactly a loss.
Oh, she's better than where she started.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. She's definitely better than she started. I think it's just a question of where the spotlight shine brightest at the end of the book. And it sort of feels to me like, not that she was used, because that puts it maybe too harshly. But Ruth is certainly the one who was on a journey, here as well. And it feels like her contributions are a little bit more minimized by the end of the book, is really all the point I'm just trying to make. Is that it sort of feels like she gets a little bit diminished, whereas Naomi literally takes the baby. It's like, oh, thank you for all the good work, all the threshing and winnowing, and then seduction and everything else. I'll take the kid. I got it from here.
Rabbi, in the middle of the story, while I'm listening to what's going on, I keep going back to Naomi saying, okay, you did what you had to do. Now sit here. Let's see what happens. Is Naomi aware of any of this that goes on?
I think she planned it.
That's what my thought was too.
Yeah, she planned it.
That's what I thought.
Exactly what she was doing.
Okay.
It's interesting because most of the stories in the Bible do not end up this happy. Usually everybody gets killed and that's it.
Well, I definitely think this one has, again, it is a happy ending all the way around. In terms of just, again, everyone sort of being better off than they were when they started. We also have, again, that theme, right, of famine to fulfillment, right? And so we have that literally, we have the famine in the beginning, and then we have, things getting better. And it's the same way. The characters start off in a pretty rotten place. They start off really in the worst place you can be in Israelite society. And by the end of it, it's party time. We're going to have a bris. Like Mazel Tov, like things are going really well. And so definitely it has a very happy ending. And I just think that the author here says, well, this is the happy ending, but let's think of what it actually means as well. Let's think about roles, think about status, think about who is important and who is less important in the community. I think the author is really, by the way, ending it in a way that is provocative, especially with, again, that Perez line, really reminding us, or really creating this line and saying, hey, you know, King David, that really important guy, yeah, his background wasn't so kosher. It wasn't so great. He's got a Moabite mom, blech, and he's got, you know, all this Mishigas going on in his backstory too, blech. But wait a minute, maybe it's not blech. Maybe it's actually hooray. Maybe it doesn't matter at all, because people are people, and it's our own deeds that define us, not the deeds of our parents, grandparents, you know, 200 years ago.
I like that.
Just like the Moabites.
Didn't we start this out with the question about chesed?
Yep.
And
Chesed,
this is,
right?
the whole thing has come down to this, that there's been a kindness that has happened.
There's been a kindness that has happened, and I think, again, the greatest kindness is accepting each other for who we are and our own deeds. Ruth's Moabiteness to the author matters nil, because it doesn't matter what her bloodline is. It matters what kind of person she is. And she is a person who does the right thing, does good things for her mother-in-law. She's a pure-hearted, kind-hearted person, right? And she's doing the right thing. It doesn't matter if she's Moabite, Ammonite, Midianite, you know, it doesn't matter what she is. It matters the person she is inside. That, to me, I'd like to believe that's the author's intent. But if that's true, what a progressive book this would be. You know, if that's what the author's trying to say, is that we're not excluding people based on, you know, what their grandfather did, or, you know, because that's the whole thing with the Moabites. The Moabites are not part of the community because their ancestors were mean. They were mean to the Israelites, right? They weren't nice. That's why they were excluded. But after 500 years, maybe get over it a bit, what the author's trying to say. You know, maybe it's enough, you know, that we have to do more with the Moabites now. Let's judge Ruth, as a person, you know. That's why I mentioned the first week we studied this, is that I'm not sure it matters if Ruth is an Israelite or not. I think that's the author's entire point, is I'm not sure that it matters to him that Ruth converts to Judaism or whatever it is. Ruth is important because of the deeds she does and who she is as a person, not whether she's Israelite or Moabite. It matters that she is kind, that she's loving, that she's caring, that she's considerate, you know, and I think that's what the author's trying to say. I think, I'd like to think at the end, you know, that he's saying, let's judge each other as people, not about what our grandparents, great-grandparents might have done, you know, 50, 100 years ago, or even more, 1,000 years ago, you know, with some of these stories. I'd like to think so.
Sorry for her.
For which one?
I feel sorry for Ruth. She was being used.
No, I don't
She
think
had to
so.
give up her child. Where was the emotion between a mother and a newborn baby? And she was I just feel very sorry for her at the end, even though she was performing chesed, a good deed in which, you know, but I feel sorry for her. She gave up.
I don't think you should feel sorry for her.
No, me neither.
She has come to a position where it's expected that she is a person of means, and Naomi is also a person of means, and wealthy people had people take care of their children. It
Yeah,
was
think
expected.
of it as a
And
babysitter.
and Naomi is family.
Mhm.
Who better to take care of your child than your
And
family?
family, I agree.
I would say that there are many different readings of this, and you could have a gentle reading or a harsher reading. And I think both of those readings are in here in terms of the perspective. I think you can read it gently, as was just mentioned, you know, that you can say, oh, you know, it's nice. And maybe Ruth, you know, doesn't have the best in terms of just how the book ends. But we know we have a sense, you know, that we have to believe, I have to believe, that the relationship between Ruth and Naomi is so
Right.
strong, right? And the relationship between Ruth and Boaz is so strong. I would like to think at the end of this book, she's happily married. She and Boaz have a great relationship together, and mom comes over once in a while to babysit the kid.
Right.
And it's an important part of the family unit, and that's a very sweet way of looking at it. One can also look at it as
I agree.
Naomi pimps out her daughter-in-law for some barley, social standing. That's another way of reading it. But let's maybe not focus on that part of it. I think if we read the good part of it,
I like
think
the
that's
good
fine.
one. I like the
Yeah.
good part best.
I think so
Me too.
too. Though I can certainly see the other reading of it as well. But I do think that that gentle reading sort of at the end, that we have the building, we have the creation of a new family unit, to perpetuate the line, but also a beautiful model of what extended family could look like, and that we choose our family in a way, because that's the beginning of Naomi and Ruth, right? Is that we choose our family. Ruth is and Naomi is the mother she chose. That's the relationship, and I think going back to the question about how biblical books might end, I think we mentioned in the first week is like, do we ever have a relationship in the Bible between two women that is as again, the gentle reading, as mutually sort of supportive and loving and caring as Ruth and Naomi? I don't know if we have anything that even rivals it. Frankly, one can even argue it rivals really any other relationship in the Bible. One could argue in terms of again in the best light of what their relationship looks like, as positive and constructive as it could be.
Like
Perhaps. Yeah, I like it.
Good story.
With that said, we got rid of all the salacious material. We're doing Lamentations next week. We get to be depressed.
It's going to be boring next week.
Yeah, my goodness, it's going to be. Well, I'll put it this way: I think there might be a little bit of cannibalism involved, so maybe we'll be more boring.
Right.
But it'll just be a little bit more gory and a little bit more, R-rated for different reasons. But Lamentations is, again, not to bury the lead, we'll do it next week, but Lamentations is our next scroll. It's read during during Tisha B'Av. My head was in the trees. It's read on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, and in its own way, I always like to say this, in its own way, is also a really beautifully written, beautifully constructed book, very poetic, a lot of symbolism. It's not an easy read for a number of reasons, but it is powerful. And one of the reasons why I think it's still included in our biblical corpus, even back then, is that because the emotions shared within it can be seen as universal emotions and as very important emotions. So we'll get to that next week. Okay, ladies and gents.
Excellent.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good class.
My pleasure. Everyone stay healthy and safe.
Lila Tov. Lila Tov, everybody.
Lila Tov.
I heard the beginning of a question. Is it true?
Is it what?
I thought someone was asking a question. I didn't hear it.
Judah, is it Judah next week or Lamentations?
Lamentations.
Okay.
Lamentations. We get to lament together.
Okay.
Everyone bring their sackcloth and ashes and a little bread. Actually, no bread. It's a fast. No bread. Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.